Good afternoon. My name is Magda Bakali. I work for Stimmuli for Social Change, and my specialty is gender equity projects that focus on women, specifically in STEM. And it covers the field of education and professionals as well. Today, we're going to talk about inclusive language in education. This training is in the context of the project STEAM that focuses on gender sensitive teacher training in STEAM. That includes art as well. This is the partnership. As you can see, we're in different countries. So what this course is about, it focuses on three main areas. What is inclusive language and why it matters. There's a short introduction to a list of terms. The list is not extensive. As you will see, there are specific terms there, and there's more resources for you to discover in your own time. And then on the third part, there's inclusive language in education and some examples, some suggestions of things that you can adapt in your teaching. Now, this short course aims at increasing the understanding of why gender inclusive language in teaching matters and aims to support trainees in identifying non-inclusive language and learn gender-neutral terms to incorporate into their teaching. While this course has been adapted to address the needs of teachers, anyone who's interested in the topic can use these materials. There's some guiding questions for you. Question number one, do you know what the difference is between sex and gender? How does language contribute to a gender-inclusive classroom? And why should you use singular they in education? I welcome you to consider these questions before you start actually going through this course or watching this video. What is inclusive language and why it matters? So we use language to communicate with each other. So the vocabulary, the structure, the topics, they have a great impact on what kind of message we end up sending to the other person. And therefore, language has a crucial role in creating an educational environment, right, that is gender inclusive or that is exclusionary. So it does matter what language we use in class. The vocabulary of gender continues to evolve, and there is no universal agreement about the definitions of many terms. Nonetheless, it is always worth doing our best to stay informed, and that is why we have prepared this course. And there's going to be more trainings in the context of this project. The precise use of terms in regard to gender can have significant impact on overcoming many of the misperceptions and biases associated with gender. Now, that's a separate conversation that has to do with misperceptions and biases, but language is a core part of that. Research on gender blindness in education, understood as teachers' difficulty in identifying signs of inequality, shows that this challenge affects male and female educators differently. However, and that's the most important part, when looking at everyday educational practice, both groups demonstrate similar levels of difficulty in recognizing and addressing inequality. So therefore, the use of non-sexist language remains one of the central obstacles in promoting gender-responsive teaching. Initial teacher education, therefore, must acknowledge that the development of gender learning competencies of teachers in schools has to start at the most basic level, that is, their ability to recognize and act in response of inequality. So that's what we're trying to do with this course. We're not trying to teach people how to speak, but rather be cautious of the language aware of the language they choose to use. Therefore, for teachers, for current and future educators, this involves adapting strategies that help them think critically about their own practice, revisit their self-perceptions, and integrate pedagogical approaches that support emancipation and equity. Moving forward, there's an introduction to a list of terms. We start with the most common term, sex. It's the biological and physiological characteristics that define humans as female or male. These sets of biological characteristics are not mutually exclusive, as there are individuals who possess both, but these characteristics tend to differentiate humans as females or males. Gender, on the other hand, refers to social attributes and opportunities associated with being male and female, and the relationships between women and men and girls and boys, as well as the relations between women and those between men. These attributes, opportunities, and relationships are socially constructed and are learned through socialization process. They're context specific and they are time specific and they're changeable. Therefore, this definition is related to the gender identity that we're going to see below this definition, that has to do with its person deeply felt internal and individual experience of gender, which may or may not correspond to the sex assigned at birth, including the personal sense of the body, which may involve, if really chosen, modification of bodily appearance or function by medical, surgical, or other means, and other expressions of gender, including dress, speech, and mannerisms. As you can see, these two are related, but they're not the same, gender and gender identity. And a core part of understanding these terms is also gender roles that are traditionally associated with males and females, with men and women, projecting social expectations on the person. Moving forward, gender expression is people's manifestation of their gender identity and the one that is perceived by others. So there is the way that the person sees themselves, but there's also the way that others see the person. Gender role that we talked about in the previous slide is social and behavioral norms, which within a specific culture are widely considered to be socially appropriate for individuals of specific sex. This again, it has to do with social expectations of the role that a woman needs to fulfill. For example, being a caretaker, and a man, a social expectation for a man that he's supposed, in a lot of cultures, he's expected to be supporting the family or paying in the date, etc. Again, this is context specific and time specific. Gender stereotypes, preconceived ideas whereby females and males are arbitrarily assigned characteristics and roles determined and limited by their gender. Again, this has to do with the way that it's a female or male is stereotyped, that goes in the way that people are portrayed in books, in teaching books, for example, a lot of times. In specific national contexts, teaching involves pictures that only traditionally present women as only nurses and not versus doctors, or as like a policeman would be portrayed primarily as a man, etc. Gender literacy. Gender literacy concerns the understanding of gender-related issues in society, the development of skills to think critically about socially constructed gender narratives, and finally, the ability to recognize one's values and beliefs towards gender roles and rules. So this is what this learning to recognize gender-inclusive language and vocabulary is part of developing gender literacy. We become aware of these differences and the different definitions and how they play into us becoming effective educators and working towards promoting gender equality and equity in education. We're going to see some examples here in gender-inclusive language in education. Examples of inclusive language, because why we're looking at examples, because what language you use matters, even in STEM classes. Even if you feel you're working with hard science, your choice is related to the way you communicate it influences your students. There's a misperception that language matters only in humanities and arts or social sciences, but that is not true, no matter what you teach, especially in sciences that numerically there might be less girls than boys or less women than men, that it does matter. Why? Because it creates an inclusive space or an exclusionary space, because it creates representation, because it inspires all genders to pursue further studies. Non-discriminatory language is more readily accepted by users when it is natural and unobtrusive. Truly neutral and inclusive alternatives should be pursued, and we're going to give some examples of the alternatives that can be used. Again, respecting the context and the persons involved in the environment that you are. We're gonna provide some examples coming up in the next slides. And please keep in mind that these recommendations are provided here as an inspiration and as a way to show you alternative ways of expression, but also to encourage you to look further and do your own research and reading and attend trainings like this course. So there's vocabulary that assigns gender, like pronouns. There's a singular they in English language. The singular they is used in three main contexts. A, to refer to people who specify their pronoun to be they. Two, to refer to people whose gender is unknown to us, the speaker, the person who is speaking. And three, to refer to people whose gender is irrelevant for the specific context. For example, I fell on the street, but somebody helped me up. It was nice of them. Now we need to recognize at this section that the way we express ourselves in English language is different from the way we express ourselves in the vocabulary that we use in our national languages. But the purpose of this, doing it in English, is the course is to make you think in these terms and then apply them in your own language. Examples of vocabulary that assigns gender. Gender bias, for example, is mankind, stewardess, man hours, miss or Mrs., policeman, salesman, fireman. These are very gender specific words, whereas gender neutral is, instead of mankind, humanity, flight attendant, human hours, miss is more neutral, policewoman, salesperson, or firefighter. In the last slide, the European Institute of Gender Equality, says that there's no one-size-fits-all approach in terms of language, but depending on your specific situation and context, you can choose an approach and adapt it. You're probably going to come across a number of terms such as gender-sensitive language, gender-transformative language, and gender-responsive language. Now, there is a glossary provided by the European Institute of Gender Equality and further resources that you can look into. Below in the little boxes, we have included a toolkit that has been developed under a different Europe-funded project, a guide also developed under a different project, and a gender inclusive teaching resources, again from a project. Some of these resources are available in different languages and others are not. I would encourage you to look into all the resources. Excuse me, I'm going to go back to the slide. I would encourage you to discover resources that might be relevant to you and use them at your own time or explore them at your own time. The first toolkit has been exclusively designed for educators. The gender inclusive teaching resources have also been exclusively designed for educators of different STEM fields. Please go ahead and take a look at them. Then there's a list of references. You can find the sources used to prepare this short course. Thank you for your attention.